something that crossed my mind when you were speaking, because it's something I thought about before as well. Like being a fan of the project and seeing it since the beginning or whatever. It's sorry if I sound weird that I like think about it so much or anything, but like I had been like when I purchased my first, which was Vittoria Crib, I wasn't familiar with any of the artists I think you dropped that day, but I knew that these were going to sell out fast. So like I just opened up a bunch of windows and started typing in names and like just trying to find one that maybe I identified with or whatever, you know. And I saw Vittoria's work and I was like, this is it. And it was still available. And I was like, boom, perfect. And then I wrote her too and was like, wrote her later in the day, I think, and said, you know, like, oh, I checked out your work. It's awesome. She was like, oh, I checked out yours. It's awesome. So like we made that bridge, just like you are talking about. Like I'm experiencing it and I see that she mints places and like I've been looking into it and I'm a potential buyer. The exact story you're talking about, but even with you know, much bigger collectors than me, you know, I'm sure that's definitely going to happen. But even I noticed through my purchases and then my small following, when I, you know, purchase something, I've seen some of my collectors who, you know, like that post, and I know those collectors, and I know for a fact that they're clicking through and seeing who, you know, who Erica is now, and seeing that her pinned tweet is that she has a collection on OpenSea that's just like super badass and sitting there ignored, you know, like collectors have to see that, you know, like maybe I can't quite, I'm not in the position yet to, you know, do that myself, but by buying that signature of hers, my hope is that it can be a bridge to like the collectors that like, yo, I fuck with this person. Like she's legit. You can trust me. Buy her fucking work, you know, like, so exactly your point is a beautiful thing in this project, I think as well. And even the fact that it's like not even the artist's work, it's just their signature that is the inroad, it makes it even more beautiful, you know, more meaningful or real, you know, like legitimate, I guess. Like if that collector does end up going through, like that's a real person that's going to connect with it. So anyways, not to ramble on, but I mean, it is such a awesome project. I can't believe it's so new. Like it started less than a month ago, you know, and like wildly successful. I feel like really we're lucky to have you as guests on FakeWhale right now and to be releasing this interview in the time we are, because you're in the middle of such a meaningful project that's going to be going on. I actually forgot to check when this will be coming out, but it will be soon. So yeah, everybody listening, definitely pay attention to the Unsigned project. So
it has a museum actually. Alpha. Yeah, there's a Alpha. There is a museum show for Unsigned, and it's at Francisco Carolinium in Linz, and it goes on view on September 8th. And so not
Germany?
all Austria.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's
was Kevin there recently?
I think possibly. So Ars Electronica, you know, it's like Ars Electronica is there, and so anyhow, it's
a museum show for Unsigned.
A museum
show.
Will
it be? But it won't be all done. It won't be done yet.
But it'll be remaining. The installation will still be ongoing. So by the time the installation will still be up when it's done. So we've already planned for it then to add every week the other signatures. So we're designing.
Wow! Congratulations! Like really, that's awesome. When does that open? September 8th.
September 8th. Yeah.
Wow, that's like.
Are you coming? Are you booking a flight right now?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Wow, it's okay. I wanted to make sure I got the days so that it's actually less than a week. No, that's not right. No, almost 2 weeks. Okay, like a week and 6 days.
Yeah,
right on September 8th. That is insane. Congratulations. Like, I have even more questions about that. I guess just real briefly, what's it going to look like? What's it like? Are you guys like very in touch? Are you flying there? Did you have hands on, or are you just like, get us screens, make it look cool, leave us alone?
Never.
We're never like,
I wish it could be like that.
I feel like normally people are like, leave us alone.
It's so true. Can you guys just stop sending us emails and stop sending us tweaks?
This is why we produce our own work.
You're the ones that are just like, one more thing after like already sending 4 emails that haven't been responded to.
No, we have to do we literally have to produce our own work, or we would have no friends.
Yeah. But anyhow, we just got the floor plan yesterday. So we've been discussing what the design looks like. I think we're going to go a hybrid of potentially a hybrid of physical and digital, so that it does have that link to, for people also who aren't familiar with NFTs, they can like understand that this is an NFT project. But we're also going to display probably in black vinyl too.
Some of the
stickers, like on the floor and on the walls. So it should be interesting. Potentially like a continuous like line throughout the room as well, like a signature line somewhere placed. But we're thinking it through. Like I said, we got the details of the floor plan yesterday, but it will probably be a physical digital hybrid display.
Yeah,
and we will be flying.
I'm sorry, maybe it's not the place for it or whatever, but like, have you thought about collecting the physical signatures at all at some point to display? Like I know those would be very varied, but I mean, at that point, that would be okay within a museum context or something like that. Is that a thought, or some people even signing digitally where that wouldn't even be possible?
Everyone has signed physically. We haven't inquired about getting the physical signatures, like the actual papers. I don't even know if people would be holding on to those. We haven't thought about that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot with it. It's just one.
No, I think it's a cool idea.
It's a very interesting idea. I mean, and a museum show would be kind of the ideal place probably to have these kind of collected in context.
Yeah, I mean, I already imagine in my head it could be like the glass case in the middle or whatever, like not really, but just like where you have like the scrapbook collection of the stuff or whatever. But anyways, yeah, just curious.
We have seen some of the artists post their like the paper.
Really?
They're like, yeah, I've seen some artists post.
I wonder if any collectors have reached out to the artists and been like, "Hey, is that real? Can I have that?" Because I've sold NFTs where the collector has reached out and been like, "Is there a physical for that? Because if there is, I'd be interested," type thing.
Yeah.
Wonder. Interesting.
Yeah, we do have the napkin where the first 4 signatures were, because we literally signed.
That's got to be displayed at some point. Yeah. That's iconic.
We're keeping that in our back pocket.
Yeah.
For now, but
that's
a bomb. That's a weapon for later.
Yeah, it's a weapon for later. There's one aspect of the performance, or we're going to bring a performance to this, which is the opening night. Anya and I are going to sit in the installation, and we are going to sign our names for like on one paper or one scroll, just over and over, like in a kind of durational performance manner for a couple hours, like 3 hours, to sit and sign. So it'd just be this long scroll of the same signature, and then we'll install that in the space. Maybe also the pens too.
I love it. Yeah, that's great. Wow. Yeah, wow. Your hand's gonna get tired. I wonder what it's gonna look like at the end too. I'm just thinking visually again. Like I wonder if by the end of 3 hours, your signature has morphed like from the beginning.
Yeah.
There's a Pusha T album called My Name Is My Name, so it makes me think My Name Is My Name. And the reason that stands out in my head for some reason is because I got the CD recently, and the inner the linear notes, it just says very, very artfully MNIMN, and it just so beautiful as a stack. Eminem, like My Name Is My Name. So anyways, that's been just ricocheting around my brain while we talk about these like signatures and the importance of a name and everything like that. I think, honestly, there's probably some of the same, narrative even in that. So we had time to spend, we were able to spend some time together in London for the first time, even though peripherally knowing of one another for quite a while, particularly me and Anya. So I definitely want to get into that London project because I was able to view that. I didn't get to participate. I was there and I was like, I want to do it with Tez. They're like, oh, but you can pay with money. And I'm like, but why? That's ridiculous. And I just didn't know if I had Kukai set up and all this shit. And then it was like, the second last day, not to make excuses or anything, but I missed out on this project, but I did get to view it. And it was a cool experience regardless on whether or not you had your photo taken. And very multidimensional and everything like that. But before even that, just to touch on the Anya the Anya connection. you as a performance artist worked with a mutual friend, Alex, and he gave me some of the photos to work with, and out of that ended up a skateboard. And so like we actually have a weird collaboration that already exists out in the world together.
Totally do. We have if Twitter knew that we had a collaborative skateboard.
Yeah. So I have it right here. I'll show it.
Do you
I have
really?
wheels on and everything. Yeah, it's right here. How great is that? Yeah, I haven't read it.
Wait, this is also a Deja collaboration. Tell him why.
Yes, so those gloves I purchased for Anya. They're like mime gloves.
Vintage mime gloves.
And I purchased those for her like probably within a month or so of when this photo was taken.
No kidding. Wow. So I mean, like, this is so cool to me. I mean, I think this is pretty cool. Like,
I love this.
But yeah, I just had to bring that up because it sits in my house. I have a different skateboard that I ride a little bit more. I'm not a good skateboarder by any means, but I wanted to make it functional because it just, having a non-functional skateboard sit around feels fucking weird to me. You know, like I'm not the guy that's gonna hang on the wall or whatever. So I got it all set up, and I love it. I love the simplicity of it. You had your head shaved at the time, which I was obsessed with at the time. Like I had to work with models that only had, you know, shaved head because I was really angling for androgyny and kind of what we were talking about earlier, anything that would pull out of the concept or pull the viewer out of the concept. So like to me, gender and even sexuality and stuff just gets in the way of other shit. So like, and what evolved here is like actually kind of funny because you're not present. It's like your anti-presence is the presence, and I love it. I see it every day still. So I just wanted to bring that up before I forgot.
You've never seen a skateboard? Yes, I have,
but not in real life.
Yeah, I haven't. We had one. I think it's in.
Oh, it's in Boston.
Yeah, I think it's in Boston. But it didn't have wheels.
But it didn't have wheels. It looks really cool with that functional element.
It's a good looking board. Everybody that comes over is like, what is this? Like, and Sovereign was really a cool. I don't even know if they exist anymore. Are really functional much longer because Alex moved and all that. Maybe they are. Apologies if they are. But it was a really cool brand in general. It's not anti-skate culture. It was just like trying to make skate culture way more inclusive, you know, and do things in a different way. It was very art forward. All of their boards were designed in collaboration with like artists and all that. So shout out on that. It was pretty cool. But that was like, man, what way pre-pan, like 2018? 2017? All right, man.
Time flies.
Man. Yeah. It's a whole nother world, right? That pre-pan shit. That feels like a lifetime, but I just think it's very cool how things come back around. And now to be speaking with you, I've been aware of you then, I guess, for 5 years, which is wild, you know? And then I was hearing about Operator when I started to enter in, because I believe you were interacting with the Web3 community a little earlier than I was. But we were in a show together at Nue House. Were you there?
No.
Okay. But I remember seeing your work. It was like the fashion piece. I was very intrigued by it, but I never like had much time to spend time with it. But you were bouncing around as Operator, and I don't think I knew it was even you, Anya, part of it at the time. And then I found that out, and I'm like, I've known that person for a long time, like, you know. And it was one of these kind of like slow coming together and figuring it all out and whatever. So, and then in London, we showed together, I guess, in a kind of more meaningful way where we both had like full installations that were spent time. We both were there, and you were performing. So the name of that project was?
That's the Privacy Portraits. And that's part of the Privacy Collection. So actually the show at Neue House in February during Freeze LA, we were at the VCA Tezo show. We released what was on view there. The fashion piece that you're referencing is a trench coat. And that is a trench coat that we created, the silhouette created by Barbara Sanchez-Kane. She's a wonderful fashion designer from Mexico City. And then the concept of the coat is that it has a signal blocking and isolating functionality to it. So any phone or wireless device or RFID objects that you put inside, passports, whatever it is, anything inside cannot be hacked, traced, monitored, etc. So that coat we created in 2020, and it went on view in Rome. Eleonora Breezy put together a show called Renaissance 2.0 2.0.
Oh, wow. Yeah, real quick, just shout out Eleanor. She's wonderful. Yeah, she's part of like the NFT Mag, right? And like she's doing that book. I did like I think I had like a 2-hour conversation with her for that Rizzoli book. So anyway, shout out Eleanor. So these are early days.
These are early days. So that was fall 2020. And we had been creating this coat ever since she interviewed us when she was working with Mokta in 2019. And this was right after On View. And she was interviewing us about that project, but also what the follow-up project was going to be, which was this signal blocking trench coat called I'd Rather Be in a Dark Silence Than. And we created this coat, and it was in partnership with Mokta, and then it went on view at Eleonora Breezy's Renaissance 2.0 2.0 in a group show with Ai Weiwei and Sophia Crespo and Hakatao. Wonderful list of artists that I'm missing some of the names. And we were, at that time, we couldn't go to the show. It was also during, really intense COVID times. So we're like, we can't go. We're at this artist residency in Berlin. Once the show wraps, ship us the coat, because we hadn't seen the coat because the production was happening in Barbara's studio. And so it had shipped. And then we made a whole promotional video out of WhatsApp voice notes and little videos that Barbara was sending us as we were
from the
R&Ding the code. And we made this whole promotional video out of this, with scraps, but it somehow ended up being really eerie and cool. Anyway, we received the coat in Berlin, and we're like, let's do an immersive installation to really show the capabilities of this coat. And so the name of that installation is also I'd Rather Be in a Dark Silence Than. And that's what won the Lumen Prize in 2020 for immersive, or 2021 for immersive. It was the immersive winner. And then we thought, okay, let's take the concept of this project and and run it through a Web3 blockchain lens, and think about how privacy and transparency, work and function within the blockchain. And so that birthed the privacy collection. So the show at VCA showed this kind of anchoring piece, which was the original trench coat displayed with the original AR filter that was part of the immersive installation that you could put on yourself or the coat. And then to the left of that was projected the privacy key. And we issued 9 of these keys. It's a black 3D key made out of glass.
It looked like Swiss Army knife or something almost.
Exactly.
Yeah,
because we were speaking to the principles of utility in a Web3 context, which
kind of a sassy way.
But
well, I mean, it just hit me. It just bam, knocked me on the head. The utility is oh, a Swiss Army knife. Got it.
So, and at that time, that was the first thing we had ever sold, because for 6 years we just were we make performance installations, you can't collect.
But that on your own terms, not for lack of want or market, on your terms. And this is something I wanted to actually ask. I wanted to ask you about this, but I didn't. I'm trying to frame it in a way that's not any sort of negative connotation to it, but the funding of your projects with these big scopes that some of them have, if that relies on institutions mostly, then.
All of them, I would say, are commissioned. So whether that's a private commission or we've had projects like Soft Evidence supported by the European Commission. We've had, some pieces more private institutions or brands or museums.
Sure, so definitely the Adidas thing makes sense, of course. How about the museum thing? Is that an institution thing where they come to you and are we have a budget and here you can create within this type thing? I mean, it's a great way to work if you're not looking to sell your work. But that's great. I was just curious because there's multiple ways of going about it, through the institution, through grant systems. There's ways of funding projects without actually not needing to profit, So I was just curious your position on that. Would you mind if I actually jumped back to Untitled for a second, or Unsigned? I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Is there revenue sharing happening with the artists?
Yeah, and we include this.
Sorry, 1 second. I'm sorry. Siri is for some reason catching my voice instead, and it's gonna. Yeah, no joke. She's like recording me right now.
So creepy.
There we go. Sorry,
Okay.
that was weird. It just popped up, and all of a sudden, like, Siri's ready to talk to me. I must have said something that sounded like, and I won't dare say the word. Like don't say Sandman 3 times. You may appear like you can't say that word otherwise. So where were we? That was so weird.
We were talking about the profit sharing. So actually on Unsigned, which if you go to unsigned.art, that's the URL for the project. And we have everything laid out in like a FAQ at the bottom. So folks,
I should have looked at that.
No, but this is more for everyone to know, and I think also just to like share that information publicly. So as collectors and people who are participating have the information, it's really, I think, helpful to know. So the signing artist gets 90% of the sale, and then the unsigned team gets 10%, and then on secondary, the unsigned team gets 10%, and the artist gets 10%. And then
awesome.
Also, and then the signatures in terms of like we have a terms of use, and none of the copyright is transferred to the collector. Like it's there for them to have that like art that they have to put on view wherever they want, their home or whatever. But unlike like a PFP or something like that, it's not like something you can go and then like
make
merchandise and all of this, because this would be like kind of contra to the idea that I think that's also really important. So we kept all of that as tight as possible as well. And additionally, like we can't commercialize it beyond, what we've agreed to in the actual Tezos object collection. So.
Right on. Yeah. Okay. Sorry to side note
no,
there.
It's really,
and I quickly flipped in my mind if this was even an appropriate question, because I didn't want to put you on the spot. But then I was like, no, the transparency of it all is important. So like,
it is. Yeah.
Anyways, it's a question that I had wondered too. Like when I bought, a couple of them, I was sure that the artist was getting taken care of, because otherwise they would not do it or be as stoked about having their piece bought. Or like when I wrote Vittoria. She would have been like more not as enthusiastic, maybe. Like, oh, cool, somebody's making money off of my fucking shit again, whatever. Yeah. So like, I knew that there must be something worked out here that everybody's being taken care of. So thanks for clarifying it. But back to the privacy collection, like this jacket was part of the privacy collection, the key was part of the privacy collection, and then so was the performance in London then.
Exactly. Yeah. So we had first the privacy key, then attempts. And then this was the second lot, what you attended and what you saw.
Attempts.
Yeah, so attempts was the first lot in the privacy collection, and the privacy key was kind of like an appetizer to get into it. And so the second lot is called privacy portraits. So do you want to share?
The idea kind of going off of the history of our practice, where the audience is not just the audience, but actually the audience participant, or somehow becomes the subject of the artwork. And also we had with the attempts brought in, because performance has been a really important part of our practice, and we had already done the attempts, which was me performing. And so we're like, okay, got that done out of the way, but how can we use performance in the creation of an NFT or in the creation of a digital artwork, where it's actually the piece is made through performance rather than it being a piece of performance. So we did that first one, and then we were like, how could it be made through a performance itself, which is exciting. And also make the collector or the audience participant is the collector, and then they're also like the subject of the artwork, which is something we've been doing for many years. And so this idea of taking the collector's portrait, anonymizing it live through performance, through an immersive experience, was the whole idea. So essentially, for those who were not there, you were led up to a kind of photo booth where I was there. You were prompted to think about something that you prefer to keep to yourself, And once you had that in your mind, then I took a Polaroid of you. So it's kind of like you're capturing that you're thinking about.
It'd be a lot.
It was the responses when I said, think about something that you prefer to keep to yourself. There was a huge range of responses, which I need to write about, because some people suddenly looked horrified. Other people were like smiling when I said that.
Yeah.
Like the different categories of why you keep things to yourself. That is a huge range of emotions that people feel.
And also, wow, it's like also so telling to like what keeping something to yourself means to different people, where like some people are scared of the things that they're keeping to themselves, but like some people are keeping things to themselves because they cherish them so much, even if it is maybe because it is awkward or whatever, but also they're not embarrassed or maybe not or whatever, but also you keep things to yourself because for good reasons too, for cherishing reasons or whatever. So like when you said that, that's why I smiled, was like, wow, that's so dualistic. It will immediately separate people like into like which one are you, like, you know? Interesting.
That was very unexpected. So basically that was the prompt, because the idea is not just to, you know, have people smile or get nervous, but to actually like in that moment, and we were reading about like a lot of the history of portraiture and kind of capturing like an essence or like the moment of someone. And so we're trying to actually make it so the way that they were inhabiting their own body or what they were thinking about the second that the camera went off was also part of the concept. Even though, of course, these get anonymized, so you're not like seeing someone's facial expression. It's still in there, like it's in the aura.
Oh yeah. Trust me, how much I understand like those nuances of what you can't see is so important in there. I'm loving this more and more the more I hear about it, because like I don't consider myself a photographer per se, but I shoot models for my work a lot now, and it's never the photos that like are the intentional photos, you know, or you know what I mean, that are the ones that I use, or a lot of the times it's the ones where it's like the model's eyes are half closed by accident, or they're in a moment of transition, or even like they don't know I'm shooting, so they're just like staring off, and like that's the most interesting because it's the most authentic. So the way that you are manufacturing that, like you're manufacturing basically that what you try to catch in when you're catching an essence in like a transitory moment, and you're trying to manufacture the moment so that you can capture it, which is fascinating to me just alone. So like it's a small facet of a larger project, but so anyways, carry on. The photo gets taken, it gets anonymized, but that anonymization is being done by Deja, right? And the tools you're using are unique as well. So like I'll just say, like from a viewer's perspective, this was all very cyberdelic, you know, like it was I walked up some stairs and there was like an archway of brick through which you could see Deja behind a table that had like a light or a glass or a plexiglass partition angling in, where she almost looked like a DJ behind it, and it was illuminated and glowing. Anya was up over in some like nook up over on levels and stuff, like, and there's these translucent flags hanging with projections. It's impossible to explain, but it, like, I hope you don't mind that I'm using that term, like cyberdelic, or kind of entering in like it felt like a fucking DJ nightclub, you know, like walking in there. And to me, that was very engaging right from the beginning. And I think I even walked up to you and said to you, Deja, like, you look so cool right now or whatever. Like, and then so the tools you were using were like magnifiers and prisms almost and stuff from what I could see, but I know there was what was the idea behind? I can obviously hypothesize that you selected the tools for very meaningful reasons and stuff, but could you talk about that process of after the photo is taken? Is the photo an analog photo that was taken? Or
it's a Polaroid.
It's a Polaroid, so it's very analog. There's one of them then, and that gets passed off to Deja, and then you're doing the anonymization. And talk about that, please.
Yeah, and so the first thing to know is that the anonymization that happens is based on sort of like I would say almost like an analog algorithm, and the way that we designed this is that once Anya takes the photo, it's handed to one of the performers who takes it over to the next booth, and the audience participant who just had their photo taken is asked to sit down, and they have a chamber where they just roll dice. And so they roll the dice. So if they roll a 3, that tells them they get to roll 3 times. So then they roll 3 times. Each number has a different material and process, and that process has to happen in that order as well. And so when it's then put into a security box and it's walked downstairs to me, and I receive that, and there's timers. This was actually really, like, it took some getting used to, because they would put timers in the security boxes, the performers, and lock them. And so when they were ready, because the Polaroid legitimately takes 10 minutes to develop. Okay. 10 minutes. So it's like we had this whole, it was actually a very mathematical organizing type, like OCD. You would have loved to be part of the team. I think
I was just going to interject a little for a second to say that, like, this wasn't just you two. There was many people involved in this. There was people, like, you would walk up the stairs and somebody would greet you and they would ask if you wanted to participate. They were educated enough to explain what was going on, what the cost was, how you could pay, etc. They would pass you off to another person to handle that payment, who would then pass you off to another person. You know, there was, what was your team for it? How many people was that?
That was 7 people.
Seven people that you had to educate and manage and organize.
So we had people at the front taking fiat payments and TES payments, and then we had, if they were confirmed to pay, then we had Naomi, actually, and she would allow them to take a card, and then those cards had a combination of words that have popped up in previous lots and continue to be, like, circulated through the privacy collection. So they're kind of like reused in many different ways, but these became like the title of the actual piece. So like Lock, Shock, or...
So we never had to ask for anyone's name. They were basically identified the whole time by this phrase, and then that became the name of their portrait too.
Love that.
Yeah. And so they would go and sit in this, like, waiting room, which was kind of the sunken living room vibe, which is
like, literally, you love waiting rooms, or like you love the idea of them, like the oppressive nature of sitting in a waiting room? Or do you like sitting in waiting rooms?
No, I really like waiting rooms.
Sitting in them, or the idea of them?
Both. I like both. Are you going to be in Miami? It has to do with waiting rooms.
Really? For Basel? I mean, I don't have plans to be. There would be nothing stopping me or whatever. Nobody's, like, usually I just, if somebody approaches me to do something or to be there or have whatever involved, like, I'll do it or whatever. But I usually won't hear about something.
It's related to waiting rooms.
Love this idea.
Yeah, we'll invite you, but there might be a waiting room in Miami, or there might not, or at some
like, I love that idea, because to me, like, there's definitely an overlap here, because I think a lot about oppressive design and the way things are designed to intimidate people, like in government buildings and in institutions and stuff. Like, I'm always thinking about that, especially when I have to interact with it, because having to interact with it enrages me. Like, I getting a piece of government mail. Like, I've actually, like, sat with this and, like, analyzed, like, and came up with a term called fear graphics. I was like, everything about this is meant to make me feel inferior, to scare me. They're putting this is in bold about the penalty, even though, like, it's all air. Like, this is all bullshit. Like, you can barely enforce this shit, but there's a design at hand here that you're trying to use to intimidate. And what is that? That's crazy. But that stretches up to institutions, buildings, architecture, waiting rooms. I feel, to me, when I sit in a waiting room, I feel like I'm being punished. I feel like how bad are our systems that we've come up with this thing where it's like we can't get shit good enough that we have to just sit around and wait for people sometimes. Like, oh, doctors are so important. You just have to carve out 4 hours of your fucking day if you want to see a doctor. Like, because you might get there and have to wait an hour. It's like, what is that? Like, I mean, I understand that like the importance of doctors and yada yada, but I still feel like there's like a purposeful inefficiency at play to the design of the way like systems, institutional systems are played. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. The fear graphics is really interesting. It's very
I have that written so many places. It keeps on coming up. I want to do something with that. Hey, everybody listening, fuck off. That's mine. Okay. But like, it's like super interesting. It's just like all threatening and like, it just gets and they escalate it. If you know, like, oh, you didn't respond to like some bullshit and like, oh, now it's escalated.
Add a red bar at the top for the next one.
Exactly. And you start getting like, now they start putting the information on the outside of the envelopes. Like, you know, like, you know what I mean? It's interesting. It's like so nefarious to me. Like in my worst moods, I sit there thinking about the person, but the sorry son of a bitch thinking about this shit, like how to hurt people through the mail. You know? Anyways, we could probably both rant about this forever, but you know what I mean? Like, anyways, is some of this at play in your work? I assume, yeah. Like,
I wouldn't say fear graphics.
Not quite fear graphics, but like commercial surveillance capitalism. You know, that has a certain aesthetic that you're definitely using, and it's oppressive. You know,
or like UX design as like a weapon, or turning into like a borderline psyop situation.
Yeah. Well, and like waiting rooms are usually pretty bare and like uncomfortable and like white and stuff, you know, like, and just sterile. Like they're not, you know, so like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's something there. Personally, that's how I feel. Like I see these kind of design choices. It's like, do you guys watch TV? It seems like you probably don't.
No, not really.
Yeah, there's like shows like Severance that just came out about business culture, like really subverting like the imagery and like the like really over the top absurdist level, but using these aesthetics and like this like business. It turns out to be more creepy than anything else. Just like, you know, to me, a waiting room could be the most creepy fucking place. That's more, you know, depicting a waiting room could be more creepy to me than, you know, hell, depicting hell. You know what I mean? Like a fiery cage or something, you know, like a stark waiting room where you are forced to like sit with your own thoughts while you're waiting to go into a thing that may be uncomfortable. You might be getting bad news. It might be any sort of thing. So you're sitting in this stasis of unknown in a white room alone with your thoughts, you know, or maybe even around other uncomfortable people. It's fucking hell. So, you know, we
have quite a bit of like, if you go to our website, the whole thing is built partly as a letter, but mostly as a contract. And that aesthetic came from, and that motif came from the terms and condition, the immersive contract you had to stand inside of for On View. So that immersive contract, like there was actually, we wrote a TNC that was, you know, put in vinyl on the wall. And it was like a Cheshire Cat wrote a TNC. It was kind of, you know, a contract between us as the artist and you as the participant. But it was like very much a social contract. It wasn't kind of, you know, it wasn't really meant to be functional, so much so that they had to like put a real notice that we were going to be using facial recognition and things like that in the space. But anyhow, we took the look and feel of that room, and it like ended up being like all of our communication and website branding across the board since 2019. So if you go to our site, there's like even the about page, it says what you're signing up for, terms and condition, and it has like our bio, and it's like A, our terms, B, our condition. It's like everything is built in that way. And actually there's the signatures that you see throughout, like, you know, everything that
before unsigned.
Yeah, this was like back in 2019. So it's like that's where it came from. So it's interesting with this having unsigned. It's very, I don't know, it has like a through line to this kind of like utilitarian or these like contract signature aesthetics that kind of like tie to some of our even earliest work.
I remember for On You too, when we were trying to communicate, because like between us, we know what it looks like. But when you're communicating like to a museum or needing to like communicate to a 3D render, like how the space is gonna look, there was a very creepy waiting room photo from THX 1138 that we used as kind of like, not here's what the room looks like, but here's what it feels like in here. So I think that image, I can see it very clearly in my head, kind of reminds me of like the feeling that you're getting in the waiting room. Like
and I mean, I'm sure that, you know, I'm somewhat referencing the same kind of thing, you know, obviously. And what you're saying about using the design of like a contract as your template or whatever, you know, like that, it's super cool, you know, like we are playing with certain concepts in different ways, you know, like you know, when talking about government graphics or whatever, you know, like taxes, that's kind of like what I'm getting at when I say, you know, like you have to pay your taxes, and they escalate that, and they'll escalate or whatever. And like I had wanted to do through the record label that I co-own, a collection called Tax Season. You know how there's always, you know, like seasons of clothing, it would be tax season. And we would release a collection that was all based on the graphics of taxes, you know, like the W-9 t-shirt, you know, the 1099 t-shirt, you know, whatever else. And then having fun playing with these different things. So anyways, yeah, again, like, this is me copywriting all this, by the way, like that's what I do on it. But anyways, you know, like, so like what you're talking about of using like noticing these patterns and then subverting them into like these other things, which then brings to light kind of the absurdity of it all. Like to me, contracts are absurd. Like they're silly little, it's just like, and then you purposefully use language that's very hard to understand in an effort to confuse, so that nobody really knows exactly, so that the thing is still malleable enough that if you end up in a position that you want to wiggle around with it, you can, you know, that's really the design of contracts, because they always are going to lean to the person writing them, you know, and there's always going to be these loopholes that only they know about. It's very nefarious. Contracts are ridiculous. But I understand the necessity too, and that's why smart contracts is like revolutionary, right? The transparency and the equality in them and everything like that. So a very cool through line there.
On the topic of accounting.
Accounting? You mean taxes?
Accounting.
Right.
There's actually one other design element, which isn't taxes, but we, in 2018, we're just like, it's so hard to get paid as an artist. It's like, feels pretty much impossible. And so we started on all of our promotion or our pitch deck materials or presentation materials, we started putting like in the branding, in addition to like the TNC kind of vibe, invoice aesthetics. And we would put like
get ready,
fake invoice number. Like you get like to the part where it's like, all right, the project we did at LACMA, like in Art Basel, Hong Kong in 20 and then like the background textural graphics, it's like a line like where like from the contract, and then it has like a little like stamp where it's like invoice 07 for like amount.
Wow.
Like 3.2 million.
Yeah, like we would just like make these absurd like aspirational, like we're getting paid we're paying to work. We're trying to manifest getting paid and paid back from all the times we never were paid, you know, this kind of thing. And so we're like due on, address, invoiceable to, operator LLC. Wow. And so actually if you go to our site even now, you can see some remnants of these invoice background graphics.
We're just manifesting.
So let us know.
You have no idea how much I love that.
You could send us a W-9.
That's so good.
W-9 merch. We'll invoice you for the W-9 merch that you're gonna make.
Love.
Jesus. Yeah, that's so good. I mean, speaking my language, I love stuff like that. Like you guys have a lot of fun with it, don't you too? You know, like there's a playful nature. Like there's a lot of people that would see your talk that you gave in London, and it was a great talk, very informative and everything like that. But they would think, you know, that you're not having a lot of fun maybe when you're working, because these are all very serious matters that need to be addressed, you know. But you guys are like, you know, clearly having tons of fun, right? how important is that? Not to get off topic, I'm going to get back to the London thing here in just a second, but like fun, like, is that a huge part? Like if like, hey, we're not going to do this because it's not going to be fun. Does that come up or ever? Or is there a compromise when it's like the importance of this project is too great, we cannot not do it, even though it's going to destroy us? Deja, like you said, how involved you got in that museum project, and it like, you know, kind of crushed you for a while. But has there been times when you're like, oh, if we're not going to have fun, we just can't do this, so it's like it's not worth the effort? Or because like you guys are taking on, you know, battles in a way, not battles, but like, you know what I mean? Like these are important issues that you guys stand behind, and yeah, like where does that, what is the play there? I think you froze for a second. Excuse us, everybody.
That we possibly can.
Anya, I'm sorry.
Okay.
We lost you for maybe like the last 5-10 seconds. Could you just...
No worries. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I feel like in terms of dealing with intense subjects, I think humor is really effective, and like dark comedy and irony, and I think it's really effective. And we think we're hilarious. Like in On View, like me
too.
Like the names, like we were cracking up making the terms and condition, like writing this like poem in the format of a terms and condition, and the name of one of the stages was I Didn't Sign Up for This. So we are always like, we had the fine art security guard who was like guarding the art, which was the picture of the audience participant, that I studied the body language of fine art museum security guards. And I made a choreographic sequence based on like how they stand and how they lean and what they do. And so like all of this is completely like absurd. And it was ultimately about a really serious subject of surveillance capitalism, but having these moments where there's something like sassy or absurd or ridiculous or kind of ironic or surprising, I think is a really effective tool if you're talking about something serious. That's why, I mean, I think like, I love watching comedy because I think you have to be really smart to be funny. And I usually feel like if we are doing our job and we really understand a subject, that we can like poke fun at it. I think that's a good sign. And we usually do that. And I think a lot of the times we're probably working so much that it feels overwhelming. But then when we have these moments where something has come together, the level of fun and excitement and like elation of seeing something that we've been working so hard on become real and seeing people experience it is so next level that it usually makes most of the struggling days completely worth it.
Yeah. I feel the same. Like that shit's a drug. I'll do anything for it.
Wow. Yeah, it's incredible. Did you
No,
Deja, you have something to add, but I agree that I find anything that gets anything that serious, like anything so serious, I don't even know how to say it. Like there's, to me personally, nothing is beyond absurdity. So like any seriousness taken to its extreme is absurdity to me. Yeah. Any seriousness at all taken to a full, swear to God, Siri just popped up again recording me. I should screenshot this.
She needs to stop.
Siri is also very serious.
So sorry.
Serious. Oh my God, because you said serious. That's it.
Okay. So anyways, anytime it's so funny. But yeah, you bring that to an extreme and it's absurd. So yeah.
Even Unsigned is like a little bit ridiculous in a way. And also we are leaning into, like we've been talking about leaning into the market.
Extremely Duchampian. And Duchamp was just fucking absurd as hell. Like that's the most absurd piece, you know, probably historically. I mean, but anyway.
It really like hit us when we were talking about Unsigned, you know, that night around the dinner table with Annika at this dinner event that we, I guess, took over with our brainstorm. But we were like, okay, fuck, if this is going to like bring down the value, like a woman artist or non-binary artist signing their work brings down the value of the work, we're like, let's just fucking sell the signatures just as a like just like, like not even the art, just the signatures, And so, and I think that was an important emphasis to make too, because it's so absurd. It's like
the
hyperbolic,
absurd.
I think a lot of our work
exactly. Well, that's exactly what I mean, Anya. What you just said, like the problem is absurd. Like so, like the only response to something that absurd, been like and then like everything like that is absurd to me. Like government's absurd, institutions are absurd. Like it's all absurd. So like, so we're getting really long, and I apologize about that. I want to make sure that we wrapped up or got a full picture of the privacy project in London. I know we like this analog generative thing is it speaks to me very much, because I think the last 3 interviews I did were with generative artists, and me coming from a world of like, I really don't know how I feel about this. Like, I don't know if I think that, like, what I feel, like, what I think, like, to, like, what my judgment will be, like but I don't mean that in a grandiose way. I just mean that in an individual level. Like, what do I think? Do I consider generative art? Is it worth my time and attention? And after it went from very skeptical to like, I feel like this is pure nature, like I feel like this is like one of the most pure forms of, and I'm super curious of playing with it, but I really like how you spoke about this analog generative process that you introduced. And then I, because I'm interviewing all these generative artists, I relate it to my practice, and it's hard for me not to think about all the different things I do that seem purely generative too. Like everything's fucking generative, like whatever. But so generative really works well for you too, with the participatory nature of a lot of the generative work happening now, which I find one of the most interesting parts. Like, piece doesn't even exist until somebody interacts with it. It's like it exists in like a superposition, like, in quantum theory, until somebody observes it, and then it's, viewed. So, but anyways, the analog generative nature, the rolling the dice, etc., the tools used, Deja, what is the crescendo of it all? That I know that you upload then the images onto the blockchain, send it to the participants, but they don't get their image because they're just randomized. And so maybe you can bring us through the end of that project.
Sure. Yeah. So I think we got to when they rolled the dice, and the algorithm, or sorry, the inputs were written onto a paper. They were sealed in the security box with the image, which was developing, with a timer for 10 minutes, and it was like locked inside, brought down, and the audience participant, you kind of walked it down with the performer, and then they put it in this like kind of like little hot box that I had. The timer would go off. I would open up the box. I would kind of look at the order, so to speak, to see what kind of levers I was going to pull. And then I began the anonymization process, which we also had a camera, like kind of just like face down, so you could like live stream it right behind me.
That was cool.
See, you like, okay, cool. Yeah, and I think this was important because you also can start to see like the same tools were used, but or there was a variety of tools, but you can see them coming back. Just like you can notice like signatures within a generative, PFP project, or a generative artwork created in processing that, has certain characteristics, but they're always different because they're using a simple rule set, and from that is an emergent aesthetic that happens. And so, for instance, if someone rolled, fire, light, and like a chemical, then I would just, dip into that process. So I had bleach, I had
that's really cool.
Fire, I had spheres, I had glass, I had textures, different sheets, and so these different like methods that I would just like kind of follow the script. And then the generative aspect already also extends to the scanner bed, because in the scanner bed, because most of the materials used had a glass component or acrylic component, you had quite a bit of refraction happening when the light would scan through, and this kind of like created a very like an effect that we couldn't like recreate, and that was like another thing. And when we were anonymizing, and also we didn't finish all the anonymization that during the performance because it just took forever. So for a week afterwards, we stayed in our friend's flat in Crystal Palace, like just like finishing. So Anya and I were both anonymizing like afterwards. And we had like our production team come over too. It was just like such a hustle. But you know, there was a moment where it's like, are we gonna keep that one? And then there's like the times where you don't keep it and you scan again, you're like, fuck, I should have kept that one from like 10
yeah.
ago.
So you there, yeah, I know exactly what you mean because I do some like, you know, I think there's a term scannerology, like a scanner and whatever, but like where you are doing real time, whatever, you know, like dragging a piece, dragging something on a scanner bed, you know, where you can't really reproduce that ever. And I'm super familiar with that, like where I didn't save one where I'm like dragging something down the scanner bed. I'm like, oh, I think I can do it better. And then you do it again. You're like, and then you never get it again. I totally understand that.
Yeah.
And I love what you're saying about the, like, that's generative in itself, and like the refractory nature of glasses and the materials you were working with causing these. To me, now you hit on exactly what I mean when like everything's generative, like that's pure generative to me. Like the same way that like, to me, we're seeing generative processes play out every day. Like when you fly over a mountain and you see like the rivers flowing down it, and then you see like that same pattern on a rock and in a sidewalk and in sand and in all these different things. Like that's what it makes me think of. And like to me, like there's a generative nature, or nature is generative, and that's whatever. So like the way that you're working with it is super interesting to me because I feel like I interact with generative processes too, with like the lack of control I have over my own paintings. You know, where I'm actually just trying to control the process of drawing, to me is like generative. You know, I do 40 of them to get one, you know, type thing. So like touching on the generative thing is super interesting. Not to sidetrack you, I'm so sorry. I'm also just obsessed with this idea of emergent aesthetics. I don't think it's a new concept per se, but it's just the idea of an emergent aesthetic is super interesting, you know, like, and I see it in your work, definitely. But not to sidetrack all of this. So like to finish it off, you finished it. I remember, so like when we were in London, we were over at Alex Astorix, shout out, right click save. And you and I were standing on the balcony and you were telling me about how you were kind of like, you were nervous because you hadn't anonymized these photos and like you were carrying them around with you. And like, you're like, we were going in, you told me the story of going to a hotel with like scanners and shit, and then being like, what the fuck are you, you know? And like, I remember telling you, please send me a photo of your setup.
I have a photo.
I took a photo. You got to send it to me because it's so me too. Like that's me. Like too. I'll just go somewhere and just be like this, you know, and set up and work here if I have to. But like, yeah, you spoke to me, I think probably right before you finished that off. But I remember just laughing and totally relating, totally understanding even that subtle fear of like, we got to get these fucking things documented because if anything happens to these portraits, these people already paid for their shit. Like they got to get them something. So yeah, it was really funny. So you accomplished everything. Everybody.
Yeah. It took us a long time, like a week of manic anonymization. And actually one day,
this is good.
Because we got into like some Grey Gardens territory where we were like, okay, we're day 3. We're like in Crystal Palace. So it's like not, outside of central like London. It's like, you know, very neighborhoody and stuff like that. And I had like bleach and gloves and we had
foil and gloves everywhere.
It just like
were we like in the bathroom of a place then using bleach and shit? Like
so we were in the front yard.
The front yard, we were in the kitchen, we were like everywhere.
Okay.
We were just turning into like then we weren't like changing for a while. We were just like we're in this one uniform. And like
the gloves,
just became a full manic like we're only doing this and nothing else, like stop to eat and that's it, you know, and didn't go anywhere for days. And so there was like a police officer who came in to the entry and was like, hey, what are you guys doing?
Cooking meth.
And we're like, like, hi, 1 second. I'm like taking off these gloves. I was like, hey,
foil. Like I was
like, we heard this like sound that there was like a disturbance or something like the night before. We're like, oh, sorry, we didn't hear anything. And they're like, look, I'm like, sorry, we're doing an art project, you know.
Like, you're the disturbance, by the way.
But anyhow, yeah. So essentially, after these were created, we scan them, of course, because that's where like the final work happens within that scanner bed, and then we just crop them. There was because there wasn't time to do any like post effects, so you can see like little dust and because they were happening live during the event, like slight like maybe like brightness or like just a few kind of like tweaks, but like leaving the natural color. The film was black and white, so I already had this black and white kind of look, but they were color images because when you make
the prism.
Yeah, when you make like even if it looks black and white to your eye, like when you actually make like glass black and white, it loses all of its like all the little micro colors that are making it like look the way that it's.
Trust me, I understand.
So it was interesting to have the black and white image, but still like maintain that. But anyhow, then they were minted and transferred to the wallet address of the collector, and there are 67 portraits, and we're actually 67 portraits. Yeah. Yeah.
Will that continue? Will you do that again?
Maybe not. We don't know. There have definitely been requests for this to happen again, but what we are going to do for Berlin Art Week is we're going to display all 67 portraits, and we are going to have one portrait available, which is called Unknown Sitter, and this was an error that happened. So it's we don't know who the sitter is for this one, but it was taken that night, and it's just like basically a blank Polaroid. And so I received it down at the anonymization desk, and I opened it. I was like, there was also like the sticker got lost, like, so it's actually, we don't know who it is. And so this is the unknown sitter. So this is kind of like the miscellaneous,
love it,
mystery portrait.
When you say you're going to display the portraits, are you meaning the anonymized ones or the portrait, like the Polaroids?
The anonymized ones.
Do you have the Polaroids still?
Yes.
Or have you destroyed them?
So there was the option for the collector, like at the end, they were like, can I have my portrait? And we're like, you have the option for the artist to keep it, or you can shred it. So we had a shredder there on site. So some people opted for us to keep it, or they could shred it.
But there was no option for them to take it.
No, it was a shred or let the artist keep it.
No, I dig that. I really like the idea of like, yes, give the participant control, but like maintain absolute control, like.
Yeah.
So,
yes, exactly.
Yeah. I don't want to, yeah, I get it. We'll just leave it at that.
It's still art. It's not customer service.
Yeah. Thank you. I feel the same way. Like I am the master of ceremonies when it comes to my art. Like there's not room for you. I'm sorry. Like you didn't live with this forever. I'm like, this is mine, and I will make. It's important that it's known too, for me at least. Like, yeah. But anyways, this has been a wonderful conversation. I was just out in the desert. I just got back from the desert a couple days ago. I was out there for a week solid, finishing, compiling all the imagery, and then kind of doing the, I wouldn't say there's a narrative, but I'm doing more of like a conceptual nature and kind of forming that conceptual nature around my next book. So like I accomplished the goal. I guess this is me announcing that like that goal has been accomplished. I even got a little further and a little ahead of myself, even with writing the publisher and like the designer I'll be working with, just like, let's go, ready to go, let's fucking blah, blah, blah. And then like, forgetting like, okay, people have lives and they're in the middle of other projects and yada, yada and whatever. But I sent those emails and yeah, we'll just see. And now, I mean, none of this is really a secret, but I haven't talked about it in length, but I'm also working on my next solo show to be in LA to coincide somewhat with the release of that book, which will hopefully be, well, not hopefully be, but it would be like spring, summer 23, maybe around June next year. So I'm giving myself a long runway. I'm surrounded by my work right now. Been making new work already. I like the long runway. I'm taking my time. I'm am not really taking on many projects unless it's really like, you know, suits me or fits into what I'm already doing. You know, I'm using actually what, you know, everybody talks about Web3, empowering artists, like giving them agency and letting them experiment and explore. I'm actually trying to live that instead of like continually chasing something greater success within. It's like, okay, now I'm going to use this opportunity to do the best thing I ever fucking did. You know, like the freedom of not having to deal with anybody over my shoulder on any aspect, and that if anybody ever wants to try to ruffle with it, I have the ability to just, okay, fine, I'll do it myself, or I'll find somebody else, you know, whatever. So like, that's where I'm at, not to go overboard with it, but yeah, it's a really exciting time for me. I'm excited. And then this FakeWhale thing, which you guys are now part of, we're starting season 2 back up. I believe that this will air sometime within the next few weeks on a Friday. So everybody listening, you know, like, hello in the future. This has been a delightful conversation. Like, honestly, I feel like we could probably go on forever, and like maybe we'll have to have a follow-up at some point.
We're gonna be in LA in December.
When?
We're gonna be in LA in December. Are you around?
Absolutely, yes, and yeah, absolutely. What, like, so that's what I was going to get to. I was going to say, so what's next? Like what would you like to say? Like, what are you working on? If there's something you would like to promote, or you know, feel that you have a platform here to promote something, give the word about something or anything. Just like, what's next for Operator? We do know we have 6 weeks left of Unsigned, so you're in the middle of something. So I don't mean that to be any sort of like, what else? Like, there must be more, you know.
There is.
Unfortunately,
I know. You know.
So next, as I had mentioned, is the Unknown Sitter. So that will be the next release within the Privacy Collection, and then we are planning something for Miami. So this will be a touch point within the Privacy Collection as well. As you know, the Unsigned piece will go on view at Francisco Carolinium in Linz on the 8th of September. I'm not sure how long.
When is Basel?
The 1st through the 4th of December.
Of December.
Yeah. And then we have a piece called Let Me Check with the Wife, which we minted on Super Rare.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that piece. That's not sold?
No, well, there was, I don't know how much you want to talk about it.
That's fine. We basically set
I love that,
set an auction for 5 or 7 days or something. And then I had a brain injury. And so basically, while that auction was running, I was in the hospital. Deja was worrying about me and in the hospital. So we never like promoted the auction.
And health, how like apropos.
Yeah, so it was like,
actually the day the auction went live.
The day it went live. So
we were in the hospital.
Then obviously we didn't like talk about the auction or promote the auction. So it just kind of
fizzled. Did you cancel the auction?
We just like, you can't actually turn it off, but it was it happened the day. So we kind of just like
neglected it,
shut everything down on all of our comms and everything.
But did it sell?
No.
Oh.
No.
So we'll open.
There was an opportunity that somebody potentially could have bought that though.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't have done anything to stop it.
No. I mean, it was, I mean, we were kind of in a position where it was like, you know, we have a very like close community. So like the way that we operate isn't like as much like shouting from the rooftops as like we have like a community. And so it's like we did not talk about it, you know, basically at that point on. So luckily you're doing better, but it wasn't, you know.
Yeah, I mean, when you say brain injury, it's like very serious, you know. I'm not going to ask you to get into it or anything, but I'm glad that you're better as well. That must have not been too long ago then, because when did you mint that?
It was mid-June.
Mid-June on Super Rare.
Yeah.
And so I mean, now it's a really good time too to is that, or I guess are you going somewhere with this? Are you saying that you're gonna put that back up?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Yes, we are going to put it back.
That was super rude. I'm so sorry. I mean, are you going somewhere with this? Like, what the fuck? No, I didn't mean it like that. I just meant I don't want to end this.
I love this.
I didn't want to end that if there. So like, fill us in on what the plans are for Let Me Check with the Wife.
Yeah, we will be auctioning it probably in the next 4 or 5 months.
And the reserve price is 11.38, and that was chosen because there are 1,138 rights you get from being married in the U.S.
1,138 rights you gain once you're married.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was possible to give me any more rights.
You could.
I'm just joking. That's just such a crazy
1,138.
Just waiting for
you to just.
Yeah. I mean, that's like you just have some rights available to anybody who wants to get married. We got rights. We're offering rights to people who get married. It's just such a fucking crazy thing. Now I feel like, what the fuck, man? Like, what rights are those that I'm missing out on as a subjugated individual, singular person?
There's like entire books that are about basically. I was like in grad school reading a lot about this, about how like systems punish single people. Like there's so many ways that like
it's the same.
It makes your life so much easier as a couple than as a
probably not. It's probably tied towards, and like it could probably touch this, but there is a documentary on HBO. I can't remember the name of it, but it turned out to be about how the world is geared for extroverts, and how like even though introverts could be better suited for jobs, they miss out on them half the time because just like, and it's people would a lot of the time assume this just like the way the world is or whatever, but actually when it's investigated, like the systems are actually developed and built and made in ways that favor the more outgoing people, which is not necessarily the right way to do it. So it's like improper, but it ties to what you're saying, I feel like.
Yeah.
So anyways, that will go on auction sometime soon.
Yeah.
Yes. Before the end of the year.
And we'll be in Miami.
It's as if the government's like because when you enter into a marriage, you're also entering into an institution. So almost into like a contract with the government that is presiding, right? So like, it's like the more you interact with us, the more rights we'll supply you, the more we reward you for playing along with us. Right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then it's like also interesting because it's, women, like for us, we were, what year was it? Like 6 years ago that it became legal. No,
not that we were.
That's insane even to think, because I'm already at the point of like, it's always been legal.
I'm getting tired, but it has been like not that long, like a decade.
In the first 10 years of it being legal for women to marry each other
is when we got married. So it wasn't, something that was like readily available, and so to think that, even just like basic stuff, as Anya was talking before, like if one of us is in the hospital,
which has happened.
Which has happened, then like the other one doesn't have like family rights, if and to access.
Yeah. It's terrible. It's like all these available rights, but they're not available to you even. Not even like you like literally weren't available to you. We could probably go on forever. Like the idea of rights and somebody being able to give them to you is just insane in general, right? Like fuck off. Like nobody gives me rights. But it's with you bringing that up is just so funny. Not funny at all actually, but like to say that it was only 6 years ago that to give people the right to marry like that, and now we're dealing like we go backwards with the abortion thing. It's just like, what the fuck? Like that's so crazy, like it was just 6 years ago that was progress, and then now they're like, what? Religious fundamentalists are back on their horses, and now you can't kill some cells that might ruin your life, but whatever. Anyways, so what else would you like to promote, if there is anything, or is there any other shout outs? Like, we know, so you're on Super Rare. Pay attention, everybody, for the auction going up sometime soon on Super Rare. Have you minted anything else on Super Rare since then, or is that the only piece? So not only is it a huge piece, but it's also your Genesis on Super Rare.
Correct.
Is it your Ethereum Genesis?
No,
our Ethereum Genesis, we wrote our own smart contracts.
Oh, nice.
So the attempts.
That was on Ethereum.
Ethereum. And so we wrote our own contracts for those. And then.
What was the first project you did on Tezos?
The privacy key.
Okay. And that was like during the first VCA at Noe House, right? Right on.
Yeah.
And that was actually my first Tezos mint too, for
Really?
that show. Yeah.
How cute.
Yeah, so we started in Tezos, or minting in Tezos. I was actually collecting on Tezos quite a bit beforehand, for like months and months. But my first mint was for that as well. So yeah,
So
we
cool.
actually got into Tezos around the same time. That's awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to give a shout out, promote? No. Yes.
That was already a lot.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you got Basil. You got
Yeah.
Basil. You got the show September 8th in Linz. So everybody pay
Berlin Art
attention to
Week.
that. The Unsigned project will go on for another 6 weeks. That's taking place on Object. And then was there one more thing that I'm missing?
Unknown Sitter during Berlin Art Week.
During Berlin Art Week. The super rare thing going up sometime within the next few weeks. You guys got a lot going on. It's going to be a very exciting time for you. You must be really excited. What is your feeling, I guess, in closing to this whole thing? Like, what is your position and your thoughts just on where we are within this, Web3 ecosystem? Not to use buzzwords and shit like that, but like, aside, like we just talk about art on this mostly, but we are residing within this same subculture, which like I like to think about it, and like, so what do you think about this subculture and like your position within it, and what excites you, going forward in it?
I feel like there's a lot of opportunity. And I think what you said earlier about taking time to actually reap the benefits of what you've gained from this space, instead of getting, caught up in needing to stay plugged in and say yes to everything and be involved and always be, on, is really smart, because I think that it can be very tempting, to get caught up in the speed. And so I think in addition to, projects like Unsigned that are trying to make the space also more like equitable for everyone who's participating and get rid of some of the issues that we're claiming to escape from the traditional art world, but then bringing some of the same baggage with us. That's a huge thing for us, I think, is important. But also bringing some maybe slowness, awareness of the body, and like the fact that we're human beings and we're, in physical vessels and need to survive and, care for each other, care for our bodies, and have some sort of balance. So I feel like we're definitely at the very beginning, where it's like still very hype and speed and FOMO driven. So I think we need to figure out a balance of, being able to have artists have opportunities, be able to sustain themselves, but also not have a culture that makes you afraid to relax, because I think that's a problem.
That's a problem, like with social media culture, definitely exacerbated, right? Like the idea of like having to, it's been memeified now across the board, but like this idea of having to constantly produce in order to stay relevant, basically. And, so yeah, that's it's really important. I've dealt with it, like it's a real struggle. It can be for people or whatever. And I definitely struggle with it. Maybe you, Deja.
I actually was going to answer it similar to what you said, and also calling out what Jesse mentioned earlier, because I think we're in this position right now. Like I feel at every moment I need to be very careful. Like, what am I going to say yes to? How wonderful that there's so much opportunity. How wonderful that there is, blockchain mechanisms that allow for, and communities that allow for us to connect directly with, others who might be interested in our practice, and we're able to find other artists. I think this is really, really wonderful, but I think we also just need to be careful not to burn ourselves out, which I think we've both been in situations where it's like we became unhealthy. Like you recently,
my brain injury was basically like a burnout faint. Like it was, yeah.
And so
that terrifies me, because I feel like that could happen to me at any time.
That's the thing, and
it's real.
It really can. It was like, I just think it was like interesting, this timing of like this Genesis, like super rare piece, go like what the subject of that artwork is, and we're like running around literally like trying to be so like optimized, you know, as Americans stupidly like to do, and we're just like, you know, we were the sort of like just this kind of like urge to be productive and like succeed, and it's like all of this is really exciting, but we're really just trying to find a balance where we're like, okay, like is this something also I can enjoy, where it's like you can sit with it and spend more time on it rather than being like, well, we have to participate in this and this and this and this and this, you know. And so I think that's for me the main focus right now is like patience and like care and slowness. And it's wonderful to hear someone like you know.
Awkward. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no. Delivery. Those are some nice. Very nice.
All these interruptions, like it wouldn't matter if this was live or not, but like got the postman, got Siri trying to talk to me.
Are those vinyl records? Right. What's in there?
Yes. I'm huge into vinyl. I'm gonna go broke. It's gonna be a problem. Because I spend money on vinyl as if it's not money, because to me, music is inspiration that's invaluable. It's like, I'll spend all my money on this thing because it gives me so much. I don't give a fuck, you know, like they're like, that record's $7. I'm like, it's priceless to what it's going to do for me in the studio, you know? And I've basically given up on streaming services, kind of ruined my listening habits, like the algorithmic nature of like just picking something else for you to listen to. And all of a sudden you're like constantly looking for something else to listen to. And it returned my intentionality to listening to music by always having to physically interact with it. And I'm making very intentional decisions at that point, where like I'm with this album and it feels different. And I'm not to get off topic, but I figured you'd appreciate that. Like as I go deeper into Web3, like I try to make practices that get me off and out of the phone and the computer in ways that I can. You, Deja, you were just saying the slowing down and everything, which is great. I also try to advocate for like in all senses responsibility within Web3, like even within just like people who are trying to make projects that are just like for the sake of making projects. Like, don't do that. Like, stop. Like, you know, think about, be more meaningful about what you're doing, because you see a lot of this in the space. You know, it's an issue. Obviously, this cash grab mentality, just make content to sell type thing, you know, and I'm not about that at all personally. And so this has been wonderful. Wrapping it up, we're approaching 2.5 hours, but I would be remiss if I did not mention this. Like I almost forgot it and I would have fucking been mad at myself. Is that I use the tech demo analogy just all the fucking time now. Like that I just stole it from you. I give you credit as much as possible, but I bring it up in this context for a particular reason. Is that we did a Spaces like a month ago, and in the Spaces I straight up used it. I was like, operator did a talk not long ago and they blah blah blah, tech demo. That's a tech demo. You know, you just feel great even saying it. And you know, but I just have to give you utmost credit for that fucking ammunition. Really. I mean, because it's such a blunt object that it's like, it's so, you can't argue that, you know, like, and I felt it for a long time, but just to like, so eloquently make it into a sledgehammer like that is just like, I give you utmost credit. And I will continue to give you credit for it, but I'm going to keep on using it because like, you know, it tears down, it just speaks so much, you know, it says so much with so little that cuts through a lot of bullshit. So like, just all the credit in the world for coming up with that analogy, basically.
maybe in Miami we'll have no tech demo merch.
I would love it. Hey, you know, if you ever want to collaborate on something where you see, you know, me fitting in and you want to poke some fun at something or whatever, you know, holler at me, you know.
If you make your W9 shirts, can I have one? Or
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Like I love all the commonalities in this conversation. I think that people are really going to enjoy this one. I absolutely have enjoyed this conversation. You know, I've said it in a couple other ones, but this is definitely on, you know, high on my list of like enjoyable conversations I felt were really just nice, in a good flow. I never want anybody to feel like we missed out on talking about something that's important to them. So hopefully you don't feel that way. And that we covered everything. Great. Well, and then fuck it. Yeah, this was wonderful. Fuck it, we're done. Cut.